I wasn't invited. Again. The email came on a Monday morning, just as my coffee went cold, and I was halfway through organizing logistics for an upcoming medical symposium. The subject line: Brooks Family Beach Week, 2025. RSVP now. Blinked cheerfully from my screen, like a cruel joke. I clicked it, before my better judgment could stop me. There they were: Trinity, Bryce, Aunt Mel, Cousin Darren, who's been MIA since the Bush administration, all CC'd. Each reply was full of sunny nostalgia and emojis. Someone even posted a sunset photo of the fire pit. The same fire pit where I once roasted marshmallows at 8 years old, unaware that in our family, love came with expiration dates. But my name? Not there. Not in the list, not in the replies, not even as a typo. They hadn't forgotten me, they'd excluded me. Again. 10 years. That's how long it had been since my name last showed up on one of those threads. 10 years of awkward maybe next times, of must gone to spam, of being told I was too sensitive, too distant, too dramatic, and every time I swallowed it. Tried to smile through the weight of erasure. Tried to believe that maybe next year they'd remember I still existed. But this time, I didn't call Trinity crying. I didn't ask why. I didn't fight for a seat at their table. Because this time I owned the table. Or more specifically, I owned the beach house. The very house where they planned to gather. The same one where my mother toasted her 30th anniversary while forgetting to tell me. The one where Trinity posed for her maternity shoot. The place they all treated like a shrine to family unity, while simultaneously editing me out of the photo albums. They had no idea it was up for sale, quietly listed, no family text thread, no group vote. Just another real estate transaction, offloaded like an old piece of furniture when the market dipped. I stared at the listing, the wraparound porch, the shell-colored siding, the balcony where Dad used to read Steinbeck out loud. My cursor hovered over contact agent, then clicked. What happened next unfolded like a slow, precise symphony, the kind of music you only hear after surviving silence. A week later, I stood in front of the storage unit I hadn't opened in years. Unit 43B smelled like old books and cedar dust. I found the trunk, my grandmother's, and inside it, her seashell-covered journal and a letter addressed to me. Open only when you stop looking for permission. Her handwriting was slanted and shaky, but the message was clear. Beneath the note was a trust document. Legal. Real. Empowering. A clause in her estate gave me controlling interest in the property if the current deed holders, my parents, ever defaulted on taxes or maintenance, which they had. That day, I walked into a Newport Beach law office and left with more than a legal briefing. I left with power. 2 weeks later, the deed was in my name. They never saw it coming. Ownership came quietly, with no fanfare, no fireworks, no keys handed over with a congratulatory bow, just a notification in my inbox and a line on a property record that now bore my name. But sometimes, silence is louder than celebration. And for me, it carried the weight of generations. The irony didn't escape me. The house that had hosted a decade of family memories, each one carefully crafted to exclude me, was now legally mine. I didn't gloat, I didn't post about it. I didn't even tell Savannah, my only real ally in that entire bloodline, until the paperwork was final. Instead, I booked myself the master suite, under the name Miss C. Brooks. 3 nights, ocean view, champagne on ice, firm pillows, privacy preferred. A week later, their cars began rolling into the driveway. Trinity's spotless white Audi, Nelson's obnoxious black SUV, tinted windows and ego. My mother's aging sedan, still proudly bearing the world's best grandma sticker she never earned with me. I waited just long enough for them to check in. I could see it play out from the cafe across the street. Trinity gesturing wildly at the front desk, Nelson lounging at the counter like he owned the property. My mother standing behind them, composed but cold. Then I walked in. The lobby's tile floor clicked beneath my heels as I approached the desk. The receptionist looked up, and recognition flickered. "Ah, Miss Gellhorn," she said with a knowing smile, "just explaining the guest list situation." I didn't glance at my family. I didn't need to. "There's no need to escalate," I said. "Let's clarify things." Trinity turned, face flushed. "What the hell is this?" Nelson scoffed. "Is this a joke? You think this is funny?" "I think it's overdue." Handed over my ID. "The deed transferred 3 weeks ago. The property is mine." The silence that followed was the kind that doesn't wait for someone to speak. It just settles like a storm cloud. My mother's voice cracked. You bought it? Without telling us?" "No, Mom," I said gently. "I didn't need your permission." Trinity was livid. "You knew we were planning the reunion. This was meant to be our space." "And I was meant to be your daughter," I replied. "Your sister. But you left me off every email, every invite, every photo, so I found my own way in." Nelson stepped forward. "You think you can just kick us out?" "No," I said, calm and unmoved. "I think I can reclaim something. That's different." Then I turned to the receptionist. "Please escort anyone not listed under my guest registry. Kindly, of course. Their family." Security came, nothing dramatic, just procedure. Trinity muttered something about lawyers. I reminded her to check the clause about unpaid property taxes and maintenance failures in Grandma's trust. My mother's voice trembled again. "Do you hate us that much?" I looked at her, finally meeting her eyes. "I don't hate you. I just stopped hoping you'd change." Then I turned and walked away. The fallout didn't take long. 3 days after I checked into the master's suite, the knock came. Not at the door, but on the beach-facing window. A man with a microphone, camera crew behind him, standing in the halo of a news van's headlights. It was the kind of knock that announces not just intrusion, but accusation. "Miss Gellhorn," he said, as soon as I cracked the door, "can you confirm whether you coerced your elderly father into signing over the family home? Sources say he was not of sound mind." The red light on the camera blinked like a threat. I didn't reply. I closed the door in his face and walked away. My phone lit up seconds later. Emails, texts, screenshots. One was from a former neighbor. "Is this true?" Another from a cousin I hadn't spoken to since Grandma's funeral. "You okay?" Then the worst of it. A temporary injunction notice. I was being accused of elder manipulation. Occupancy was being challenged. And Trinity, she was behind it. Savannah forwarded me the post. Trinity, in her whitewashed Instagram tone, had written, "A woman who turns on her own family was never raised with love to begin with. I pray for her soul." Below that, an avalanche of emojis, pity-laced comments, and "so sorry for your family" replies from strangers who didn't even know I existed 2 weeks ago. They were painting me as a predator, the forgotten daughter turned villain. And the saddest part? For a moment, I almost believed them. But then, Savannah stepped in. With proof. Screenshots, family group chats, private DMs, emails. Trinity mocking me for being emotionally fragile? My mother writing, "She's too busy being important to care about family. Don't feel bad excluding her. She's used to being alone." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was brimming with clarity. I wasn't crazy. I hadn't imagined it. They hadn't just forgotten me. They'd erased me. Rewritten my identity in rooms I wasn't invited to. And now I had receipts. The morning of the hearing was gray. Overcast, in the kind of way that makes the world feel like it's holding its breath. I walked into the courtroom alone. No entourage. No designer suit. Just me, wearing Grandma's favorite navy dress and clutching a folder filled with everything they never thought I'd find. Trinity sat 2 rows ahead, back rigid in a pristine white pantsuit. My mother was next to her, lips pursed like always. Nelson didn't show. The case was called Gellhorn v. Brooks. Petition for injunction against the sale of family real estate. Trinity's lawyer stood slick, young, too rehearsed. Your Honor, he began, we contend that Miss Gellhorn manipulated her father into transferring the deed while he was no longer mentally competent. The judge looked at me. Miss Gellhorn? I stood, voice steady. With the court's permission, I'd like to submit audio and video evidence of consent, along with documentation showing years of targeted exclusion. He nodded. The bailiff dimmed the lights. And then, my father's voice filled the courtroom. Clear, unmistakable, calm. I want Kalia to have this place, he said on the video, seated beside me on the porch 2 summers ago. She's the only one who came back for me after the fall. The only one who ever asked how I was doing, not what I could give. A murmur rippled across the courtroom. Even my mother flinched. Then came the audio, Trinity's voice, from a group call Savannah had recorded 6 months earlier. Let her rot in her condo. She was never part of this family. Not really. If she wanted in, she should have been easier to control. The silence afterward was deafening. The judge leaned forward. This court finds no basis for injunction. The evidence reflects clarity of intent from the deceased and a documented pattern of family exclusion. Ms. Gellhorn acted lawfully. Case dismissed. He paused, then added, this court is not here to validate cruelty disguised as tradition. I walked out without looking back. Outside, the press hovered again, but I only said one thing. Sometimes, the only way to break a cycle is to walk away holding your truth. The court ruling didn't feel like a victory. Not right away. It felt like stillness, like something had been unclenched inside me after being held too tightly for far too long. The weight of proving I belonged, of asking to be seen, had finally been set down. But that was only the beginning. The real reckoning came later, when I drove back to the beach house. The ocean wind greeted me like it had been waiting. It carried the scent of salt and something softer, maybe quiet, the kind of breeze that doesn't demand attention, just reminds you to breathe. I stepped onto the gravel driveway, slowly, keys in hand. No longer a visitor, no longer an outsider. The house was quiet, sun-washed, and still. It sighed. It looked like they'd left in a rush. A half-empty water glass sat on the counter. A towel draped over the railing. Picture frames lined the hallway walls. Snapshots of children laughing, toasts raised, summer meals under golden skies. I paused in front of one. Trinity's kids, gathered around the fire pit. The same fire pit where I once sat with sticky marshmallow fingers and believed I was part of something permanent. I didn't take the photo down. I walked past it. Upstairs, in the master bedroom, I stood at the window and looked out over the ocean. My name was on the deed now, but it wasn't about that anymore. It was about the space they'd claimed as theirs, without ever asking if it hurt me to be left out. The house was never the prize. Just the symbol. In the corner room, once my grandmother's office, I opened a drawer I hadn't dared to touch before. Inside, tangled and dust-covered, was the old wind chime we'd made together when I was 8. Seashells on frayed string, initials painted in shaky brush strokes. My C had faded completely. I didn't try to repaint it. I just took the whole thing downstairs, laid it on the kitchen table, and began to repair it, thread by thread. No glue, no shortcuts. Just care. The wind through the screen door carried a rhythm, and I let it guide my hands. When it was done, I hung the chime outside the porch, where it belonged. It swayed gently, as if remembering its purpose. That afternoon, Savannah showed up with a bottle of wine and a grocery bag. You didn't think I'd let you settle in without Pinot and paper towels, did you? She grinned. We cleaned in silence for a while. 2 women who had grown up in the same family but read different scripts. She folded the blanket Iris used to reserve for special guests. I wiped down the counter where Trinity once staged her cheese boards and critiques. When we finally sat on the porch, glasses in hand, the ocean had turned to gold. You didn't just win, Kalia, Savannah said softly. You ended it. You unhooked yourself. An answer. I watched two pelicans skim low over the waves, wings stretched wide and unbothered. An hour later, a knock came at the gate. I tensed. But it wasn't them. It was Mrs. Donnelly from 2 houses down. She held a tin of lemon bars. I just wanted to say, "Welcome home," she said. "Your father used to talk about you, you know, more than the others. Said you were the smart one." I blinked. "He did?" She nodded. "Told me once? That girl thinks in tides." I never forgot that. When she left, I set the lemon bars beside the repaired wind chime. That night, as I moved through the house, room by room turning off the lights, I didn't feel like I was in someone else's home anymore. I wasn't waiting for an apology, or an invitation, or for someone to hand me space I'd already earned. I didn't burn the bridge. I just stopped begging to cross it. As I closed the front door, the wind picked up across the porch. The seashells swayed, catching the breeze, and for the first time in years, they sang. Thank you for listening, for feeling, and maybe even for remembering someone in your life who's been left out, misunderstood, or rewritten by the people who should have protected them most. I didn't share this to stir pity or to prove anything to those who never saw me clearly. I shared it because silence taught me that truth unspoken becomes someone else's weapon. And reclaiming that truth? That's a war worth waging. Not for revenge, but for restoration. If you saw yourself in my story, even in small, painful echoes, I want to hear from you. Leave a comment below. Tell me where you've had to stand alone, where you chose peace over permission. Let's not keep those stories buried anymore. And if something in you wants to say, "Kalia, you were right to take back your place," then say it. I'll read every single word. Here is my advice. For you and for me. You don't need to burn bridges. Just stop building them for people who never planned to cross. Stop folding yourself smaller to make others feel bigger. Family isn't defined by DNA or matching holiday sweaters. It's defined by who claps when you rise, who stays when it's quiet, and who remembers your name without needing to be reminded. You are not too sensitive. You are not too much. You are not hard to love. You are whole. You are allowed to reclaim your voice, your space, and your story without apology. So go on, say what they tried to erase. Be the first to speak, or the last to leave. But always, always be the one who stayed true to herself. With strength. Kalia.